Did you?
Yep.
It says waiting.
Oh, moderation.
Oh, it's loading.
When you need to talk.
Well, I think we are live. I'm dragging a little bit this morning. I think some of you probably saw my Facebook, and I didn't put a video out on YouTube, but I had the opportunity to set up again for another booth. Careful that your hobby doesn't turn into a business. Anyway, in previous years, I only set up Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. I know. Where are my manners? Hello, I'm Robert, and you're always welcome here in my busy little shop. So I thought we would do a little bit of a live stream and kind of catch up. And I have a few people ask me where my live streams are. And during the summertime, the live streams are thin because our internet service up here is horrible. And I know a lot of people, when they say they don't have really good internet access, that means that it takes a few moments for a movie to download. But here, at times, it's so bad. I know, how bad is it? It's so bad that on my phone, I'll try to connect to a website and I can't even get it to open a landing page for a business on a website. My phone won't back up on it. And all those things for an extended period of time. But some of you are probably wondering, well, then how's that working today? Well, today we have some family visiting, and they have Starlink, and they have a portable Starlink device that they have. And so I'm like, can I borrow that? So we want a shout out to Mackenzie and Kyle as a thank you for helping make today's live stream possible. And I guess we'll just jump in there. But I started off by saying I'm dragging a little bit today because I had that foot. You can screw it in or out and level that up. The HR manager was sitting down on my shop stool and it was tipping. Anyway, I went and set up, and typically on my booths, I had been doing just the holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. And it's a short 8-minute drive from the house to where we set up. So it's not quite the job. And I think some of you know, but last year, drink water. Last year, there was a winery that's about an hour south. And I met a lady there that she sells sourdough bread. And she has her own, it's a little bit of a farmer's market vibe. And I know a lot of you have been to farmers markets, and they're selling a lot of things besides supply or products that come off of a farm. Anyway, she asked me to help support a market that she's trying to get going, and that was my, I don't know, I'm whining. A lot of people, it's about an hour and 15-minute drive to get there. And the HR manager's great help when it comes to setting up the booth. She's got a good eye for mixing products and not having it too crammed together, having open space and all of that. But it takes, with the two of us, a little over an hour to set up, an hour to tear down. So you've got 2.5 hours drive time coming and going, and another 2 hours of setup tear down time, and it's a 3-hour show. But anyway, I committed to helping me to be a draw there as one more thing. But yesterday was actually pretty good. But by the time we got dinner, did a little grocery shopping, we're in town. We go like once a week. It's a long ways to the grocery store from here. It was late. It was about 10 o'clock at night before we got home last night. So I am dragging a little bit this morning, and I'd intended actually to do the live stream an hour ago when I typically release my Saturday video. But today, no Saturday video. It's a Saturday live stream. And I do appreciate you guys taking time. I know on the East Coast, maybe you're sitting down and eating your lunch while you're listening to me ramble on here. But I had a few topics that I wanted to cover. But really, I really want to answer what your questions are. So if you've got some questions there, then go ahead and type them in. And I try not to do too much reading myself on here, the questions. Monitor it a little bit here, but the HR manager is in charge of our topics today. So I like to help people. That's one reason why I make the tutorial videos out there and share my experiences with tools. There's plenty of mistakes to make with buying tools, and I maybe try to share a little bit of my journey in that as well, and not try to impose too much on you what to buy. I know Milo was he's been talking to me a little bit about sewing machine and Skyver and bouncing back and forth on that. So that's been some interesting topic for my side of it, and I feel like I'm able to share some of that experience as we go. But I see people struggling in booth sales, and I've said it on multiple times, but I really think that one of the things that you need to do. Yesterday I watched, and we didn't have very many vendors show up. It was windy. If I'd known how windy, well, I wouldn't have committed to it, but we had probably a steady 8-9 mile an hour wind and gusts up to like upper teens. And I watched one person that didn't have weights on their tent have their tent just kind of ball up and knock everything off their display, which I really felt bad for them. But there was only 5 booths there. There was supposed to be 9 there, but I still had a good show. I had a good enough show to where I'm like, do I have to keep this as a regular venue? Because I'd committed to 3 shows this year. I did 1 last year, and I wasn't sure I was going to go back next year. But yesterday was a good enough sales day. I'm like, it was actually better than 2 of the shows I had in Arizona, where I had 100 people through the booth. So it was a smaller group, but I had some people come back that had seen me in shows before, and I think that's where it can help you, is if you are in the same location and people know that they can find you there. Even though you hand out a business card, today's world, a lot of people have a hard time calling. And even I find myself that when I'm communicating with people that maybe have placed an order and things, I'm texting. And I think a lot of people feel like you're not imposing on them. They can answer that question when they want to. But I think a lot of people have gotten to where they're not comfortable with the face-to-face conversation. And that explains a little bit about the booth yesterday. There was a young lady that was in the booth next to me. She mainly had herbal teas, and she sat and read a book the whole time and only talked to people. But I'm greeting people that are walking by in front of me. And I think it's important to engage with those people and be upfront and tell them what you do and why you do it. Let's take a break from this. I see we've got a question or 2 here.
Well, the first one to ask a question, I think, was a little bit silly question from G&M Leather. His question was, how'd you get so lucky with the HR manager? But then he sent a laughing face. So.
Okay. Well, we can cover that. That's a whole nother topic.
No, let's go for a leather one.
Okay.
So Odinware asks, have you ever tried to dye leather with powdered dyes?
I have not. I'm as much as I branch out in tools and that type of thing, I think when it comes to the finishes for your leather, I'm hesitant to tell you what you should do, except for this. I would tell you to test and find what works for you, and I would probably stick with what works for you. And that's what I've done with my leather finishes, is I've stuck with what's worked for me. And I had a couple adjustments early on, and I've talked a lot about it. I probably an oddity with some, especially out in the West, with my belts, and that is I have dyed belts. And out here in the West, there are a lot of people that are getting belts out of saddle shops and such. You might have a black belt, but it's like the rest of them are a natural belt, and people oil them and they get a nice walnut color to them, which I totally agree. but I haven't tested that because the Pro dye works really good for me. I started off with the Phoebe's just leather dye and was not a huge fan. Well, I liked how it looked, but I was using that in tan coat and I was getting color rub off for an extended period of time. Didn't matter how much you buffed it. So I'm Resin and Pro dye, and I guess if I wouldn't have a problem, I guess, doing a testing comparison video, but a lot of it, I think it's a long-term test. I've got family members that have been wearing my belts for 4 years, and the belt I've got on now is about 4 years old. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get back into talking about the booth, but I've got another question there.
Ronnie Kotler asks, on your videos, it looks like you just do a little sanding and you start burnishing. Would you explain your method of finishing your leather edges?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I see a lot of people, and I'm not going to tell anybody that they're doing it wrong. They just do it differently than me. And I think in the leathercraft world, I think there's a lot of that. And when I very first started, I did watch videos of probably my most prominent person I followed when I first started was Chuck Dorsett. And I think there's a lot of people out there that would make that comment. And when I first started buying products, I was buying it all from Weaver because I was supporting that part of it. They were helping me in my craft, and so I helped them in their business. But I just do what works for me. And I find that maybe it's the leather I'm doing, but I don't have to use a bunch of finishes on my edges. And I'll just use my my edger. It's a Ron's edger. I do try to keep them as sharp as possible, so I get a pretty clean cut on it. But I just use water and burnish it, and it burnishes right up, and it stays that way. And I know a lot of people, I don't know a lot of people, I've seen where people on a natural belt, they really don't even slick that because that's from years of using the belt, it will get that burnish on there. So we're just getting ahead of that. So what I'm doing in my mind is I'm replicating, putting the belt on, taking it off, dozens, if not hundreds of times by the burnish on the edge. And so that's all I do is if I sand it, it's typically not at that point. The only time I'll sand it at that point is if I don't like the cut that I got. So let me back up. When I make my 2-layer belt, let me grab one here off screen, sorry. When I make my 2-layer belt, I have changed a little bit. I still do 2 layers, cut the same size and put them on there. But if I'm doing any tooling on them, or this one here is in the pattern I call the Western, and if my liner is on the thinner side, it can be harder to get those edges lined up. So I have been overcutting my liner by about 1/4 of an inch, and I trim that. And I tell you what, a good sharp knife is so important there. And I've totally changed how I do it. I used to cut on top of the board, on top of a cutting board on the workbench like this to trim that. But since I started buying the DG knife, or since I bought my DG knife, I've been trimming more from underneath. And I find myself doing that on all of that. And to me, it's easier when I do that to get that straight edge. So I know we were talking about edge finishes. So once I get that cut, I will take it over on my sander burnisher. In the Arizona office, I've got a 1x30, I think it is, belt sander, and I sand my edges, and then I do that edge work. But all I do is burnish it just with water. The only time I use sandpaper typically is after I get that burnish on there and I put my first coat of Resin on it, and I'm really focused on getting the edge well sealed. A lot of times it raises a little bit of grain there. Now that grain there, since I've got the Resin on there, it doesn't really burnish into itself very well. You can burnish it and flatten it out, but then I will take some 300 or 400 grit sandpaper and I will sand that edge to get rid of any fuzz that's there. And sometimes it's just right on the glue line there, and then I'll put my last coat on there. And that's what works for me. And I think sometimes we get all caught up in these edge finishes on there. And I see people that that are, and it makes really cool looking videos where they're melting wax and then putting wax on there and then burnishing that, or using a torch. But to me, especially on a belt, that belt's going to flex. Well, that wax isn't going to stay there. That finish isn't going to be there. There's another person that I've talked to quite a bit, and they work a bunch of saddle soap into their rag and they rub that down. And all that, in my mind, all that does is it attaches to the fibers and kind of just lays them down. I'm not sure you're getting a big burnish on that like mine. I'm generating heat. I have to keep moving because it gets hot in that little bit of the burnishing, and you don't need to use a bunch of pressure because you can actually swell the leather there. In other words, mush it in and make it fatter there. I know, long conversation.
So Milo asks a question that kind of correlates. Do you use Resolene as your resist and finish, or tan coat as resist and then Resolene as your finish?
I only used Resolene one time. Anthony, I don't know if he's on there or not, but Anthony and I had a conversation yesterday about Resolene and tan coat. What I don't want to have happen is if I'm going to use an antiquing, I don't want it to ever come out of there. And I think most of the people that have antiquing that flakes out, they probably left too much there. So the point of a resist is obviously, I guess it's in a couple areas. I don't do any painted leather. I got to put the word yet in there, but I have yet to do painted leather designs or lettering or anything like that. So I think that's a whole different topic. But if we're just talking about tooled leather and an antique finish, the antique finish is to highlight the tooling that's in there. And I think the Resolene seals the leather too much to where the antique doesn't get a mechanical bite into it, but the tan coat does allow that to happen. The tan coat will allow you to oil. If you get water on there, it soaks in the leather. So in my mind, then the antique paste is bonding to that area there. So I think Resolene is, in my mind, it's not the way to go. For me in my shop, it's not the right way to go. It's tan coat if I'm going to antique, or if I'm going to leave the belt natural. It's Resolene for everything else. And the Resolene really becomes my edge finishing compound, which I like the fact that I don't need to have a whole shelf of all these different items.
G&M Leather asks, it's been a little time. What are your thoughts on the Traditions belt blanks?
That's a really good question, because I was thinking pretty heavily about that this week because I made a couple belts with them. I like them. They're a really good deal. There's no doubt about that. I want a belt that's going to be, if it could just end up the same place every time, I want an 11-ounce belt, 11-ounce belt, 11-ounce belt. The belt blanks were 9-ounce, and I don't know if they vary at the batch but a batch I had was, it's a 2-ounce liner. I don't like a 2-ounce liner on the back because when you look at the leather and you're flexing the belt, that the master of that is going to be the 9-ounce. In other words, it's going to do what it wants to do and make the 2-ounce do whatever it's got to do. And you'll end up with some wrinkles on the inside, in my opinion, when you use a 2-ounce on it. And when you roll it like this, you can see there's some wrinkles there. And that wasn't from it being at the belly or the neck. In my mind, it's because of the thickness of that. So what I've thought about doing is reaching out and saying, hey, cut me 2 sides, 3 sides of leather that's 5.5 ounces. If I could get 5.5 ounces, that'd give me my 11, and then I would use 2 layers the same thickness. And I've never had wrinkling on the back, except for like really early on, and I was using stuff down close to the belly, but of the liner side of the leather. If I was only doing 1 layer belts and I was happy with 9 ounces, I tell you what, $7.50 a piece is a pretty good deal. My other option is to get them and pull them down to say a 7 ounce and then have a 4 ounce liner, which I think that's close enough to where you don't have as much of that wrinkling that you would have in a thin liner. I don't know if anybody else, type it in here if you have a different experience in using a 2 ounce liner on a belt. Do you have to where you don't end up with that wrinkling? Maybe I just had a bad batch of 2 ounce leather that was causing that wrinkling. But that one there, I pulled down a 6 ounce piece of leather to get to the 2 ounce liner and had that. And I kind of figured that if I did that, when you split something like that, it tends to stretch it. So I don't know, if you stretch it and then you put it in there and you go back the other way, does that make wrinkles? I would think if you have it under tension that it would take away that. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
On one video, you said you had a favorite mixture combining two colors. Could you mention the two colors again?
Yeah, it's the dark brown and the mahogany from Phoebe's. I think, to me, okay, here's a word of caution. Be careful about making things that you like to put in your booth as opposed to things that other people will like. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. When I first ordered buckles, I ordered about 60% of the buckles were brass and the rest of them were a gloss nickel. And neither one of those have been popular today. I still have most, I think I've reordered one size of the brass in 4 years of making those. And I sold a belt yesterday that had a brass buckle. So it's not like they don't sell. But I'm old-fashioned. I kind of like that look of, a brown or natural belt with a brass buckle. So the matte, if you're wondering, the matte finish or the stainless steel buckles have been the most popular ones.
Just two comments. Martin uses a nylon/cotton cloth for burnishing, and then Dean uses Pro Resist for antiquing.
Okay, Dean, I appreciate you bringing that up. And I've been sitting on this test for a year now. I've got Pro Resist and a couple other finishes here from other people, and I was going to do a series on comparing those and see. So I guess my challenge, I don't know, I was telling the HR manager I'm really thin on, I try to keep a backlog of videos so I can release those. And I don't know if Ricky's on here or not, but Ricky in December is he's a firewood guy, and in December he's so busy selling firewood, he doesn't have time to even think about what needs to happen. And I'm kind of there right now, especially July. I had a nice show on the July 4th weekend. I took some belt orders, and then I've had people reach out to me from previous years, and I think I've got 9 belts right now on my order rack to get done. And I like to keep up within a week, maybe 10 days, and I'm probably going to run 2 weeks. But some of those, they told me, hey, I need them in August, which is nice that they gave me that amount of time. And I don't even remember the question at this point.
It was just a statement, what he uses, and then what do you use for your burnishing? Because Martin uses nylon/cotton cloth.
Yeah. So it's just a piece of denim. I'm upcycling used jeans, and I use the back side of it, and I don't use that. I've got some white cotton that I use for natural, just to take away the chance of getting any blue out of the blue jeans onto there. But I just use blue jeans and I pitch it whenever I'm done with it. And I actually, I had a class I took with Wallace, and I brought mine along, and he goes, that won't burnish anything very well. And I'm not going to argue with him. That guy's got a lot more experience than I'll ever have. I can leathercraft till the day I die, and he's got me beat, with that. But it works for me. It slicks them down. When we were in Italy not long ago, I'm always looking for leather shops. We visited a couple leather shops, and I thought about trying to talk a little bit about that today, but I really need to get a video made of that. It was really interesting to go into leather shops. The challenges that we've got here, and with selling and marketing and making, they have the exact same things there. And I walked through one shop, and then I had a guy, he just did a little introduction of his shop. So I'll bring that out here in the next week or so. I have to make those commitments or it won't happen.
The Contagious Cajun asks, what has helped you when things weren't going right and you felt like this wasn't worth it?
I have to go back up to there. How'd you get so lucky with your HR manager? So maybe I'll stop there because I'm a pretty sentimental guy, and you could probably get me to tears. But when I get in that situation, she helps ground things. We'll leave it there. So, what items should you make? I think that's a good topic because I think it's important. There's obviously two parts to that, right? If you're making items, I guess, is it a hobby or is it a business? If you're making items, I think you have to be passionate about that item, and that's, for me, you guys already know what that is. It's belts is my my go-to thing, the thing that I enjoy the most. And I've said before, I could just make belts and never make anything else. But you need to be passionate about what you make. And if someone said that my best market here would be for purses, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to. I think what you should make is the stuff that you like to make to a point and that you're comfortable with it. And the reason why I make that statement is you will develop the skills and really fine-tune your ability to make that item. And then if you look at that compared to the first ones, after you get a couple years down the road, I think it's pretty remarkable. The people that, I was talked a little bit about it here, but the people that I had the longest conversation with yesterday in the booth, it was about belts. And I really think a lot of times I talked about the lady that was in the booth next to me, and she sat and face down read a book until someone like started rummaging through her stuff. And I get it. That's a very, there's not there's no pressure there. I had someone tell me, man, you're a good salesman. And I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, because I think, you start to think about the used car salesman where every question they ask, the only way to answer it's yes, I want the car. But when people walk up, I'm like, have you seen my handmade leather belts? And I hand them one of those. I've not had anybody not take it out of my hands when I hand them that belt. Sometimes I have to hold a little bit longer than other times. So that is a little bit of pressure, but I want them to see it. And when they get it in their hands, and then I'm like, back up and look at that in the sun. And I tell you what, you can just see the connection there. And now they're in their mind, a lot of them are trying to think, if they didn't want a belt, they're trying to figure out who I can buy a belt for because they really like the belt. And I go through stages of different belts that I use on my rack. And this belt here called the Western is really a popular one to hand over. And when they feel it, they can tell that's like the real thing. That's not a cheap belt that's going to break in 9 months. And the other thing I was going to tell you is I've been wearing a fancier belt on my booth days, and the belt that I'm wearing now that I wear every day and have pretty much for 4 years, I have it coiled up here on the countertop, and I ask them about their experience with the belts that they have. They're like, it lasts 9 months or a year, it looks horrible and whatever period of time, and I hand them that belt and they're like, that's a pretty belt. And I go, look at the whole end of that, and you can see that it's been worn because there's the buckle mark on it, but the hole's not even elongated after 4 years. And so those couple of things really make a connection. And I think, I'm not going to say all of them, but at least half of them would have just kind of looked at the booth and then walked on. But now they're engaged in an interaction about what I produce, and they get excited about that. And so I talk about the construction of it. And I have to say it multiple times. That is not machine sewn. That is hand sewn. And and in most of the booths, I don't do it there because here locally we take stuff over the tent and tables and set that up the night before and then take the product over. But Wayne out of Tucson gifted me a stitching horse, and I take that to that, but I didn't take it to the other one. It's in a gravel parking lot, which is, not ideal. But I even do that to help show. And I'm like, I sew it by hand like that belt there and show that. And I think it would be, I should probably even do that here, even though I don't take that with me, is take one where you can see I'm in the middle of sewing it so they can understand what goes into making that. And there's lots of good ideas out there. I guess I could buy an iPad. Yeah, I know I'm one of the guys that doesn't have an iPad, but I could buy an iPad and make a short loop of videos showing me cutting and finishing. People are visual, and I think that would help to have something visual like that on my display. But my HR manager would right now tell me that my display's already crowded enough. I don't need to put a TV in there.
True that. Ronnie just made a comment. Some days when he does, assuming it's a he or she doesn't feel like going into the leather shop, they watch your video and it motivates him or her to get in the shop. Martin's second. And then Milo agrees with making what you like. He's had local leather workers tell him he's working too hard using veg tan and that he should switch over to chrome. He likes tooling, and people seem to like it. Well, I love it.
Yeah. And I didn't bring it out. It's in the house, but my HR manager has a bag. Oh, there she goes. She's going to go get it. But I could use a easier leather to line my belts with. I guess as I tell them in my booth, I use 2 layers because the top part of the hide's where all the strength is. And one of the things that's really drove that home, if you got a booth and if you make belts and you want to show the difference of that, I have a piece of leather that is, hang on a second. I had sent Kyle a note and told him that I was having a little upload problems on the Starlink, and I saw him walking up. I didn't want him to start moving it around. Oh shoot, what was I saying? So what I've done is I've started taking a piece of leather that I've stripped off the back. It's like 2 ounces thick. So it's a split off the back. And everybody watching this video right now knows there's like 0 strength in that. And I show them, I'm like, I make 2 layers. This is what the top layer is. The top layer you can't tear, but the back layer, and I pull that out and I show you tear it. And then I hold it up and I said, this is genuine leather, which is true. Those are the scariest words out there. And I could make a belt from this junk and it would break in 9 months. And maybe that's a shot. I usually try not to talk down, a competitor on that, but I don't even think that the belts that you buy, for $20 that break in 9 months, or $40 or $50 that break in 9 months, I don't really see that as a competitor. But I think it really helps drive home the point that this is genuine leather, and so is my belt. So you have to know more about it, and that's why I use the top grain leather, full grain. Yep.
You have some funny people online. I think it's Odin Juarez asks, do you go to lunch with your HR manager? And if so, does your wife know about it?
Well, I tell you, I try to make sure the two don't meet. Here's the bag that I purchased from Milo. He brought it to Prescott, and you know what? He would probably have given it to me if I wanted, but I like to support other people out there that support me. And I had someone the other day found my phone number and called me, and they're like, do you have some place that I can go, a website or Patreon or someplace that I can help support? And I'll just tell you right now, a thumbs up, even like right now, a thumbs up on my video, and taking the time to make a comment, even if it's just like, have a great day. Those things are really important. The emails that I get to talk about, the comment there that, if they don't feel motivated to watch my video, and then they kind of get enthused to get in the shop. That is what feeds me. and I appreciate it. But Milo hand sews every bit of this bag, and I look at that and I'm like, this is why I don't do bags. There's a lot of work in this bag. And Milo probably doesn't charge enough for the bags, like a lot of us. But he just does absolutely beautiful work. And I look at this stitching, and I know how things go together, and I'm looking at that going, I don't think I'd like myself. I mean, there is a lot of work there to put this together and get that hand sewn. He must be looking inside the bag here. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work. And I know Milo's been talking about a sewing machine and that type of thing. And I wouldn't want anybody to not buy tools or equipment based off of what I'm saying. But I think it's important to I guess think about what it might do to your craft. In other words, does it change what people like most about what they buy from you? But just an absolutely beautiful bag here, Milo.
Just a funny handle. The bearded pork chop made a comment.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I want to eat a bearded pork chop, but that sounds pretty interesting. There's some interesting names out there, that's for sure.
I was gonna say, is that a tie-in to what's in there?
It was interesting. I like to talk. You guys probably guessed that. And if there's a way to tie in my craft, what I do, sometimes people ask, what do you do now that you've been retired? And I like to talk and show about leathercraft. And recently we were in Italy, northern Italy. And when I go to a new town, it's not unusual for me to type in a leather supply store near me. And if there's one near, we're going to go there. And we had a couple opportunities while we were in Italy. We were, I'm trying to remember, was it Lake Garda?
Yes.
That, I think it was Lake Garda that we had traveled to, and we spent the afternoon in a winery, see how they make their stuff. And then we went for a walk into town, and there's a street fair going on, and there were people in there that had, as you can imagine, everything from antiques to food to leather work. And we were walking down through there, and I walked up, and this gentleman, he liked to make bags. So I don't know if he liked to make them, but he made bags. Yeah, this is it.
That's not the Lake Garda, though, I don't think.
Yep, it is. Yeah, this is Lake Garda. So anyway, we walked up and we're looking, and I know what it's like to sit in a booth and try to sell something. And I've said before, one of the things that I think helps me is the area up here. I'm in an area where people come to vacation, and people on vacation have a different little bit of a mindset. But I was looking through the leather stuff, and a person that was in the group with us, it was a small group, there was 13, 14 of us in the group. He said, "Oh, you're looking to steal some ideas?" I'm like, "No, I'm looking to buy something." And so we were there, and I told the HR manager, and I said, "Find a bag that you like and buy that." And the gentleman's bag, he's got just beautiful, it's lined, probably hard to see there, but
Just hold it longer.
he does a really good job. It's lined, it's all finished very well. Little pockets and such. That's the stuff that just drives me crazy. I think I was saying earlier about purses. I had somebody ask me if I made purses yesterday, and I said, no, not really. I have totes. If you want to use a tote as a purse, I got you covered. But I said, and she showed one, you should make something like this. And it was one of those crossbody, pouch. It's about this big around. And I would probably spend 2 days putting that thing together. And I would probably learn some tricks of the trade and get it done quicker. But I'm not sure I've got the patience to want to do it that way. But the bag, I thought, was just a beautiful color leather here. Just a really nice finish. And I told my wife, I said, pick a bag. And she's like, oh, I really don't need a bag, And I said, either you pick a bag or I'm going to pick a bag for you. And so she's like, I guess that's one thing after being married for 40 years. She knows when I'm like being serious. So anyway, this is the bag she picked. And he had this same A lot of his stuff was the same color leather, which I think is really good because you're able to utilize pieces from the last hide into the next with the next hide, and it all matches. But anyway, he just did absolutely beautiful. So I said, I'll take that. And then there was a bracelet, which was just a simple wrap around the wrist, either 2 or 3 times with a little clasp on the thing. And my HR manager bought me some of those clasps, went online and found them, and says I need to start making some of those. And I will do that, but it's not the driving thing here in the summertime. In the summertime, I'm focused on really making orders for people between the shows. But just a beautiful belt or bag. And so anyway, when we picked it all out, and then he's like, hang on a second. And then he puts it in this bag here, which I thought was really nice. He's got a little cloth bag here with his name printed on it. And then he had some information about him. I'll do a whole video here and cover a couple of these guys here. I'm assuming he's talking about his artistry here and what he uses. It's in Italian, so I can't read that. And then I thought he was all done when he did that, and then he grabbed a paper bag, and I've got paper bags. He grabbed a paper bag to put it in. I started to wave him off, and he laid it out, and he signed it. And what am I going to do with that? I can't get rid of it. Look at his signature. I'm like, this guy, I need to up my game, huh? I need cloth bags. He had this in different sizes for whatever it was that you were buying. But it is nice, so that you're able to protect that for its ride home. And I kind of felt bad. I felt like I kind of shot my wad there, because then I go down a little ways further, and there was another lady there, or there was a lady there, and she had stuff, and I was looking through her stuff as well. And yeah, my wife, it's probably embarrassing at times, but here I am in the middle of that market, and off comes my belt, because I got to show him what I make. And I noticed, we had a language barrier. He spoke 0 English, and I match him in 0 Italian. But he was looking at the belt, and he was looking at the edge of that, and then he gave me like a thumbs up. So he really liked the edge on that belt, which is just a water burnish with Resline on top of it there. So that was a fun experience. The gentleman's shop, it was interesting because we went into this other shop, and that was on a different lake. I don't remember which lake that one was, but we went into his shop, and then we were with a group, so we were in there really quick, and then we're headed up the way. And then I came back, and I asked him if he wanted to do a little video, and he did his little video. But then a lady from the group came in, and she was looking, and she was trying to make a decision, and I was trying to help her. She goes, "You're a harder salesman than he is trying to get you to buy one of his bags." But anyway, it was a fun experience. But I think you should make the things that you're passionate about. I would start there, and I would wear myself out making those items and honing your skills, and then move on to something else. I make videos of lots of these different items, and if you're following along trying to make the items that I make, you may, I think, find some frustration going quickly from a belt to a wallet, to a belt, to a sheath, to a bag. And the reason why I say that is it doesn't give you a chance to hone your skills on that. And I think it's important to focus in on, I made 40 belts, I'll say 35 before I sold one. Those were, well, maybe some people paid for the materials, but actually selling one. And I feel like I was able to get, I think, really pretty good at doing what I do by focusing in on that. So I would tell you that if you're into making the bags, I don't remember where I set Milo's bag, but it's okay. And then Milo would probably warn you about making and showing items to other people, because at one point, I don't know if maybe it was a frustrating day, he's like, "I think I'm done making those bags. There's a lot of work that goes into them." And so I guess you want to make sure that whatever it is that you put out there, that you like making it, because you may find yourself going down an alley of making things that you really don't like to make, like wallets. That's for me is wallets. And I've had a few people say that, that they make good wallets and they could help me. And I don't disagree. I think it's Judy and Kingman, I think, had made that comment. And maybe I need to take some time and go to somebody's shop and spend some time with them doing that. The classes I've taken have been interesting. Don Gonzalez and Aaron Heiser. I guess I've taken 2 classes with Aaron Heiser, and I've taken 3 or 4 classes with Don Gonzalez. 2 totally different styles of teaching and classroom experience there. I'm not saying anything's bad. I'm just saying they're 2 totally different people. And then, why leathercraft? I think it's important to, how do you get started there? I have people all the time ask me how I got started there, or they ask me what my first project is there. But I like the leathercraft. I did woodworking. There's stretch to fit in leather. There's no stretch to fit in woodworking. If you're a 1/16 of an inch short, you're a 1/16 of an inch short. But I do like the leathercraft. I like I think our tool collection seems to grow. I'm sure I'm not the only one with that experience, but when I first started, it was like 2 totes of tools and 3 or 4 rolls of leather, and off I go to wherever I want to go and work. And my stuff has grown a little bit since then. But find something that you enjoy doing, whether it's that or not. And recently I was talking to a lady up there. Her name is Dawn, and I know she's not in here today watching. She makes stained glass, and she makes beautiful stained glass. And most of the stained glass she does is going to be stuff you hang in a window, maybe something to catch the light, just smaller items. But I can see there's a lot of work in that. And I asked her, I said, I'm going to ask you a question, but before you answer, I'm going to make a statement on the other end of that. And she just laughed. She's bought a few things from me, so we know each other pretty well. And I said, have you thought about taking some of your stuff and bringing it and setting it up in the booth? She's in the same valley here of where we set up. And it would be neat to have stained glass as another artisan there when we set up. And I said, but before you answer that question, I said, be careful you don't ruin a fun hobby by making it a business. And she says, you get it. She said, I explain that to my kids. They're all the time like, Mom, you should, or Grandma, you should make these and sell these, or, whatever. And she's like, I don't want to ruin a good hobby. I enjoy doing it and turning it into a business, which I guess I've rounded that corner. I mean, this is really a business, and I can roll it back to being a hobby, or can I? I don't know if I can. But anyway, she totally understood that, and that's where she's at. And her thing is, though, that there's 2 things. One, to build a lot of inventory, the glass is expensive. But of course I told her, I said, if you sell a few items, then that makes it so you're able to pay for glass for stuff you're going to give away. And that's kind of where I'm at when I started selling things, is like, this isn't a business. I keep telling myself that. And but if I sell 10 belts, then I'm able to give 10 away, and I kind of break even.
Just a couple of comments. Castle Steel wanted to know if you're going to the Waco, Texas leather show this year.
Oh, was there a couple questions I was going to?
No, that's a comment. Answer that real quick.
Okay, no, I'm not going to be there. My next show will be Prescott, Arizona. That'll be my next show. The HR manager and I are taking a vacation from retired. See, I can say now it's a vacation from work because I'm not retired anymore. I'm working making leathercraft, but we're taking a vacation and we're going to miss the majority of August, and I'm way behind the curve. I should be building my videos now for when I'm going to be out of the shop in August, but nope, not going to be there. I'm sorry.
Brother John made a comment about your signature. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, well, my signature would look like someone's testing to see if the ink pen is working.
Anthony Bazil said next time you speak, he has a funny story about Italian language barrier and his father.
Okay, all right, that sounds good.
A comment about giving more notice on a live stream.
Yep, decided yesterday evening at about 8 o'clock that I would do a live stream. And then I got home and I wasn't even sure I was going to do that till this morning. And I
Yeah,
do, I totally get that and I appreciate that. And for those of you that have like, you were going to go do something today and you blew it off for the live stream, I apologize for that. Part of it is I don't even know when is a good time to do a live stream. You know, on Saturday, it's family time. And the whole dynamics of YouTube, at least my experience is that in the summertime, the viewership goes down and all that because, you know, we're more involved outside. And that's good, you know, spending time with family and out exercising. In the wintertime, when the weather's not as nice, is usually better growth for the channel and all that. And I don't know if anybody else has seen it or not, but I'm creeping up on 10,000 subscribers, and it'd be fun to get to that number, but it's just another number.
both Ricky and Noel has joined.
Hey, Noel, Ricky, hope you guys are doing well. I was talking about you earlier, Ricky. I was making an equation that July is my busiest month in the shop of producing belts. And that equates to your December with a storm coming of firewood. I kind of don't have much time other than to make items.
Dean asks, why don't you go to more shows?
Are we talking about leather industry shows?
Yes, yes.
Uh, because I'm vacationing. We wanted, I really had, I told myself I was going to Sheridan this year. There was no way I was going to miss Sheridan this year. And then we had an opportunity to do a trip to Italy, and it was at the same time. And then I had to remind myself that I'm retired, kind of, and that, you know, the family time and retired should be more important than the leather side of things. But I'll say it again, I'm going to Sheridan next year. I have to make myself go. Part of it is, I know it's like not even close. It's still like another 7 hours up to Billings, but I need to get up to Montana Leather as well. But I'd like to get to Sheridan. It's supposed to be a good show. The one in Waco, I think it's a good show, and I've been told it's grown. You know, without having been there, I was a little disappointed the first time I went, but it was interesting. I'm not sure there was. Some of it has to do with the venue, I think. Prescott is too crowded. The space is too small. They could have more vendors if they had more space, but they don't have more space. And I don't know that there's another place there to take, you know, more space. They're using, I think, every bit of space they can use. They're using some hallways, the convention space. They're using some restaurant space that is set aside for them. So they're capitalize on everything they can there. The Waco show is a big space and it doesn't feel as crowded, but I don't think it was either.
So Leon, probably referring to the comment about do what you make what you love, he says he's in the colonial reenactment, pirate, and Celtic community and does some work for cosplay community. So he's all over the place and enjoys the variety.
I do like the variety, and I like the variety when I'm not like, I hate to use the word stress, but I guess operating at full capacity. Like I said, the belts I've got, I could get those done this next week if I needed to get them all done this next week. And I've got another show coming up on next Saturday too. So, you know, I went from just the holiday shows to July. I've got 3 weekends in a row of shows, and then I have to get the stuff done before my break in August. And then when I get back from then, I'm rushing back to get to the Labor Day show. And my point of saying that is that for me to, if someone wants me to make a tote, it's like I really have to struggle to say yes because my lineup is full on the belt side.
So Ricky asks, when is your HR manager coming back to South Carolina?
Well, I hope not before me.
And Odin asks, what is your favorite food?
Uh, Something I didn't have to make. I'm not that particular, but we did enjoy the food in Italy. The food was really good in Italy, and I do like a good Mexican or Tex-Mex menu as well.
Milo commented on the lady you gave some leather scraps to wanted him to thank you for all that you've provided. She's busy making lots of bracelets, earrings, and she's very appreciative.
Well, that's nice. I appreciate that. You know, one of the things about having, a set lineup of items that you make, say totes. When I do totes out of like the SB foot leather, I end up with lots of smaller pieces, and I'm not really good about throwing all of them away. I'm like, if it's big enough, if it's like this or bigger, I'm probably keeping it. And I was talking to Milo, I guess about 8 months ago, about a lady that she gives away bracelets, sells some bracelets, so that type of thing, and said, he was trying to get her some leather, and I took out I think it was a large, if it fit, it ships box from USPS. Don't get me started on their rates. I can't believe how they've gone up several times this year. And I filled it. I cut the leather, some of them down to where it was like a solid block of leather, all packed in there nice and tight. And I had something in there I was given to Milo, and he opened it up and he goes, I guess I'm going to be jealous here about the leather you're giving away.
Jay Rose asks, what's the best leather show to go to if you live in Southwest Colorado, Four Corners area?
I would think you'd be making a mistake if you didn't go to Prescott. It's not far from you there. So you're near me, huh? Because I'm outside of Bayfield and Durango. But definitely you should go to Prescott. The one in Oregon was nice. We enjoyed that one as well. It's ran by, well, yeah, it's ran by a different group of people up there. And I would have gone to that this year, but I'm going to be on there. I don't know if John's in there or not, watching or not, but yeah, he's still here. But we're doing a hiking trip, a brother's hiking trip in Utah, so I'm going to miss that one.
So Jay Rose is in Durango.
Okay.
2 questions. How is your swivel knife skill doing? And do you have a favorite belt to make?
Had to bring up the swivel knife, did you? I cut really nice straight lines with the swivel knife. That's where it gets used the most. I created a couple of the basket weave journals this week. I had a gentleman wanted one big enough for this notebook, so it was a pretty good sized piece of leather. I think it was like 20 inches by, I don't know, 13 inches, and all tooled on the back. But I keep saying I need to get into floral carving. I have some floral carving in my booth, and people are amazed by that. And I would tell you that if you're looking for a hook, maybe you're not comfortable getting out in front of your booth, talking to people about the things that you make. But if you sit down in the front center of your booth there and the leather towards the people, and you started tooling leather, you would draw people in because they're amazed by the transformation from the leather to a floral tooling product.
Just a comment. Martin's heading out to the pub for a beer or 3 and says cheerio. Corbin asks, are there any exotic, hard to acquire leathers you dream of using in a project one day?
I don't know what they are. I hear names out there all the time, and I've had people say, maybe they look down on the leather that I use, and they're like, I only use this imported from Italy and that type of thing. And I would tell you, I think the leather's important, but the artist is more important than the leather.
Just a comment from me. You worked on Armadillo.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
So
last year
that's a great video.
yeah,
I think
there's
it's
a
2 years ago.
I think it was last year. But anyway, I've got a video out there where I had someone bring me it's really kind of a taxidermy product, but it was an armadillo rolled up, and it was a purse, and the flap on the purse had given way, and they needed me to redo that, and pardon me, and I did that, and it was a cool project. I've been handed some really fun things to work on and fix. I've got a belt here in the shop right now that was, a belt that was from the 1970s that the individual wore as a teenager and wanted me to work on it. And actually, I worked on it 2 years ago. They had me lengthen the belt, and guess what they had me do this time? You're not going to guess. Yep, made it a little shorter. But anyway, I've been blessed to have some of those projects handed to me, old buckles and different things such as that. So J Rose is in Durango. We'll have to get together for a cup of coffee, or what did Martin say? A beer or three? Did he?
Yeah,
Now
but
he's in the UK, so
yeah,
it's
he
not
said
morning
Cheerio.
time there. So anyway,
And then Dan just made a comment that it was too funny. Straight lines with a edge are hard.
yeah. So I use the swivel knife, and I tried using just like a utility knife or something like that. And so I guess the one thing I have learned is the feel of the depth I'm cutting. So, but I use on that project, I use my Tandy 3/8 to make my straight lines along a straight edge, and I'm able to make those cuts pretty well. And then I use my Barry King 1/4 inch hollow ground for doing a few of the decorative cuts, which are straight decorative cuts as well. I enjoy the floral. I think sometimes when I look at a pattern, I do like Dawn's put out some patterns that show not only the pattern but it tooled, which I have to see it tooled so that I can replicate what he's doing there, or try to replicate what he's doing there. But the picture helps a bunch. And somebody asked, like, why is it a lot of these patterns you send out, you don't have a picture of it tooled in there? And he said, because a lot of those patterns I haven't tooled. So he's just creating patterns that people like on there. But anyway, yeah, be careful about ruining a fun hobby by turning it into a business. And you can dabble all around the edges of, referrals to, from family members to maybe their friends, and then maybe just recoup enough to where you're able to kind of feed your tool ambitions. I guess that would be there. I'll mention it here real quick. It's not I guess it is a little bit of a plug, but Kevin Lee, I had a lot of people ask me, and I'm trying to tell them like which stitching chisels I have from Kevin Lee and different things such as that. And then I had people come back and said they're not it's either $65 or $68. They're not $65, they're like $200. And I'm like, you're looking at the wrong thing. So actually, I reached out to Kevin Lee and I said, would you do me a favor and create a list of everything that I have on my workbench that's from Kevin Lee? So if you go to Kevin Lee and you hit the magnifying lens, you type in Robert Little, I think it's all together, not without a space, you hit enter, it'll go to all the tools that I have on my workbench. And not all of them do I use every day, but you can figure out pretty quickly in there. And I tell you what, I don't know what it is. I've got both the Kevin Lee and the Barry King 24-ounce maul, and if they're sitting side by side, I end up grabbing this, and I guess it's maybe the handle size. I will say that the Kevin Lee, it needs to be snugged up from time to time, and maybe when I did take it apart back, put thread lock on all the threads. But then, like, mechanic, I didn't let it sit long enough to cure before I started using it. So negated that effort there. But I just like the concentrated size. And I think Barry King makes, you see there's a difference in the head size. I think Barry King makes a small head that's still 24 ounces on there. But anyway, but the chisels, Kojak Leather sent me a bunch of chisels to test, and I ended up choosing the Kevin Lee, and I really like the Kevin Lee chisels probably about the most. Does owning a sewing machine ruin a hobby? I had someone ask me that, and then they asked me about thread size. So, does the sewing machine ruin the hobby? I guess if you enjoy the hand sewing part, then it can. And then you may end up feeling like you need to do more projects with the sewing machine to justify having the sewing machine there. And I think that sewing machine, it's easy to look at that as a 10-year investment. So yes, you do have to come up with the money up front to buy it. But if you start thinking about it, you're like, I'm getting, if it's $2,600, $260 a year for having the sewing machine there to use. And I use a sewing machine, but there are times when it'll be a week or two between times of using the sewing machine. Then the other times I'll use it for a week and use it on a bunch of projects. And it helps give me, I wouldn't sell all those large travel totes if I had to handle those, because I wouldn't sell them for the price I do if it was that way. And I had someone yesterday gather a lot of attention, travel brown leather out of Virginia, was talking about it's okay to have an item that shows what you can do, and also as a magnet to draw people in. Like if you did leather armor, I think it'd be cool to have, a guy back there, a mannequin with leather armor on it, because it's going to draw people in to look at in your booth, and then maybe they'll pick up something else there. But anyway, I was telling somebody yesterday I had that on display, and the lady was looking at it, and she asked me how much, and I've got it priced in my mind pretty high. And she said, "Would you make one and put this accent on it and that accent on it?" And I said, "No." And she's like, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Well, because it wouldn't be that price. I've priced it enough to where I get my money out of the materials, make a little bit of money. I did that project really a lot to show you what the process is to make the leather duffel bag. I made two of them. I made one for myself and one that I have on display. And when I sell it, I don't know that I'll replace it. Maybe I'll come up with some other type of a bag and make that and put that on display." And she's like, "Well, I'm like, here's how I look at it. I can pretty comfortably make 2 handmade belts in a day. And my handmade belts, I'll tell you, I sell them for $170. And I know a lot of people are like, they can't understand, but we'll just set that aside. But I tell her, I said, it takes me about 4 days to make that bag. In 4 days, I can make 8 belts for $170 a piece. Quick math, I'm gonna guess it's like $1,300. I said, so I'd have to have $1,300 for that bag. If I was gonna make a bag for you, I'd have to have $1,300 for that bag, or it's not really kind of worth my time to make that bag. Obviously, if my kids said they had to have one, but they've got the other bag. That other bag, I had 40 hours to make that bag for them, and I've got one of those as well. And when that one sells, that's going to be a one-of-a-kind belt there for somebody outside the family, because I won't make another one of those either. Anyway, make what you want to make, but be careful about ruining a fun hobby and turning it into a business. But I can tell you how to do it. So if you want to ruin your fun hobby and turn it into a business, my first, let me say, 2 years, so first 7 weekends of setting up was a table that was this long and that wide, and on it was my order form, 4 or 5 belts that I had to show the different designs that I made, and some pictures of other belts that I made, and I took orders from that. And you can keep it that simple if you want. But then I let me make some the totes, because I started making products for family members, and I've got a few sister-in-laws. They didn't want a belt, so I make them a tote. And then I'm like, I'll make a couple extra totes. And for a long time, I was just making one tote. My goal is to have one tote for each weekend sale. When it's gone, it's gone. But then I'm like, well, shoot, I had several times where people knew that I only was one, and they would show up, and like the one time it was a 3-day show, and the first person that saw the bag, so it was the second person in the booth, the first person saw the bag, and she goes, "I'll take that." So then I'm sitting there thinking, I can't even show that I make bags, for the next, 2.5 days. So then I start building those. And so someone was asking me about how I batch things. When I make totes, I get in the tote mindset, because that's the other thing. When you jump from one type of project to the other, there's certain things, and I'm not really good about writing down like possible pitfalls of making a tote. And I probably should write down pitfalls, read that before I start the tote, because I'll get out of order in my steps. And so what I do now is I make, like the last time I made totes, I made 10 totes. I got out leather. I was gonna make totes. I cut all the pieces. I stacked them up. And then after I got them all cut and stacked, then I take them all over and I take the pieces and I run them through the skiver. There's different areas on the bag. It's a different width. So I'll set it to whatever the width is and I'll run through all the pieces that are that. And then I'll make the adjustments and run through all the pieces. And it really saves a lot of time because when I was talking with Lillian, I don't know if Lillian's on here or not, but I was talking about the fact that before you cut the project, you need to cut scrap. So that's where a lot of those small pieces go, is they're there, and I try to use the same leather and I run it through. But anyway, I make those in the off season, and my table went from the small table to the small table and then a bigger table. Now it's two big tables. Now I've got stuff hanging off the tent. And there's a gentleman out there has a YouTube channel, and he said that those types of booths are just a bunch of noise, that people look at it. It's like the restaurants you go to and they have Chinese food, Mexican food, pizza, burgers. It's like, what are you good at? And I think you can run the risk of what are you good at, but if you've seen pictures of my booth, it's belts and they're up front. So you walk straight up to my booth and you've got my hand custom belts here, my work belts here, and I have a small table in the middle with a couple of items on display showing some other things. Everything else is kind of around the sides, and you have to go around the sides to get to it. So you're going to hear about my belts first, and then if it looks like you're going to spend time, then I point out the other things to see there. But if you want to ruin a hobby, turn it into a business, then take the thing that you love to make the most and make that what it's about, and go and set up and be hesitant about taking custom orders because you get excited, you want to make a sale. You know, I had a purse on display and the lady's like, can you make it an inch wider and maybe a quarter inch, just a little bit, thicker? And you're like, yeah, I can do that. And then I get back to the shop. I'm like, why did I do that? I don't want to do that. And because there are times that my purse design is going to be, 11 inches, and it turns out it's 10 and a quarter. And since it's a one of a kind, it goes on the table. That's not a big deal. But if you made it and they want it at 11 inches and now it's 10 and a quarter, what are you going to do? And I have before said, I'll tell you what, I'll make one. I'll strive to get what you want. And when you get done, if you see it, if it's not what you want, I'd rather you just tell me than tell your friends that you ordered a person that wasn't the right way. I'd rather you just tell me and then not buy it. But anymore, I have people ask if I make purses and totes and that type of thing. And I said I do, and they'll be on display. And if you like it, buy it. If you don't, I understand, but I'm not interested in taking a commission purse. I don't know that I'll ever take a commission purse. I will take commission belts, and that's what I strive to do. But most of those are going to be in my patterns, and they're going to be, I think I've gotten really good at making the belts. Real good at making the belts. Thread size and why. On my belts, step off screen one more time here. What's the purpose of the thread in this belt? There's the back. So you can see that the white, or this is actually, they call it silver. It's light gray. Tiger, it's a thread. It doesn't go all the way through. It's decorative. And I would tell you that the stitching along the edge, once again, it helps with stretch. The contact adhesive, I've had people say it'll come apart at someplace down the road. Yeah, probably someplace down the road it will. But to me, the stitching is decorative. So that's what I'm looking at. When I'm looking at thread size, I'm looking at what is visually pleasing. Be careful about doing it for yourself, but visually pleasing to me, and what I think attracts attention in the booth. And I've made the gunslinger pattern before. In the gunslinger pattern, when I sew that, the pattern is only in the top layer. I don't put it all the way through. And there's a couple reasons why I do that. Like this one here, when I stitch from here to there, and then I pop back up over here, both those threads run on the back side over to there. So I'm not starting and stopping the length of thread. And so you would have these like half-inch long pieces of thread on the back, which I don't think that would be pleasing at all, and it's liable to get caught on things and it would wear sooner. So that's the other reason why I do it this way. But I think thread size on something like this is decorative. Obviously, thread size on a tote, that is going to be doing most of the mechanical holding of it, it really doesn't take thread size this big to hold a tote together. So I think you keep that in mind. And that is one thing about the Cobra 26 sewing machine. I had kind of a long conversation in a video, I guess it was a week ago, about the thread size and the Cobra 26 and what size sewing machine, easy for you to say, should you get. And if I was going to sew belts, I'd probably buy the class 4 for the bigger thread. And I know you can, I haven't tried it, you can use bigger thread on the top but not on the bobbin side of there, and that would give you your visual on there. I guess I could try that and see. And that was on some pancake knife sheaths. And yes, the color, I used black on brown and on black, and so you couldn't really see the stitch definition on there as well. Part of that was by design, because trying to get the nice smooth arches with the sewing machine, I'm better at it than when I started, so there's that learning curve as well. But with the stitch laid out with the stitching chisels, I can get really a pretty nice thing going there. So I used a tone on tone on those so that it didn't really highlight my class 26 sewing skills, I guess you'd say. Size there, but I would encourage you not to be afraid to do your first market, to get out there. I see people like, I'm working up to doing my first market this year, and don't go someplace that costs a bunch of money. The shows I set up here in the valley, we all work together as a group. It's actually in someone's on someone's property. I'm in the driveway. There's people sitting over here on the side of the yard. There's no grass there. We're in the mountains up here where it's dry and arid and rocky. And so it's a lot of pine trees and spruce trees and rock. But there's no booth fee there. And we're all there to help each other. And the way we help each other is we have our own customer base. We have our own social media following. And everybody talks about being there and then sharing pictures of other people's stuff so that we help drive people to there. The booth that I did yesterday out in the middle of nowhere, Hesperus in Breen, actually, Colorado, we paid $10, and that's for the community center just to help with their upkeep. And I've got one show I do up here, and it's $45. I know there's a lot of people spend more than that. And it's to help cover, signs and postage and different things such as that.
Corbin asks, with all the leather creators in the market, how do you set yourself apart with your work?
So I'm fortunate. I don't have people come up and set up Leathercraft next to me. And I think part of that is by design. I've set up for 2 craft fairs, and I tell myself I'll never do that again, because people show up with a different mindset there. But I would tell you that this is even more true, is to make what you like to make and what you're good at making and there. And I think, now that I'm just talking out loud here and thinking about it, I don't know if I've got the nerve to do it or not, but I did a craft fair right before Christmas in Arizona, and I sold more yesterday with, I don't know, would you say there was 35 people that came through the booths?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe 35 people. The other one we do up here, there's probably 50 or 60 people. It's all that comes through that I'm able to generate those sales. But the ones up here, a third of those people are coming because I've interacted with them and they know I'm going to be there. So they're either being sent by someone, they've seen my postings over and over and over again, or they've bought from me before. But you know what? I may just take a totally different approach when I go to the craft fair. If I go to it again this year in Arizona, I may just take my belts, because I think what you need to do if you're going to compete with other people, you need to lead with your best foot forward. And I wouldn't take stuff with you that isn't your absolute best work. And my totes, they're nice. There's no doubt about it. My totes and the bags are nice. But my belts, I'm gonna get really cheeky here. I'll put them up against anybody else's belts. Now, there's people that make beautiful floral belts, so I'm not saying that it's better than theirs. But in their class of what they are, I think that they show very well. So I think if I was going to compete there, if I showed up and there was somebody that had a booth like mine, and I saw them setting up over there, and they got a booth like mine, and I go over and look at it, and they're similar, say in quality and pricing to mine, I would probably leave all the stuff in the totes and just put out my belts. And I'd spend the day talking about my belts and why you should buy my belt. And I'm not going to say anything negative about the other person's stuff. I would just lead with what's best about mine. What do I like about my belts, and why do people buy from me? And I say it's pretty close number that 60% of what I sell this summer will be to people that have bought from me before. And they come back and they're like, I got a brown belt last year, I need a black belt this year. Or, and I send text messages to everybody that has bought from me at that show. Well, unfortunately, what I need to do is I need to put a sheet out and ask people to give me their phone number if they're interested in knowing I'm going to be set up. Because what I probably should do is have them give me their phone number when I sell them something off the counter, because I don't track those people. The only ones I track are the ones that I have orders for here, and I have their phone number to let them know when it's done. And when I set up my booth, I type out a message about, and I always make sure I have a new belt design, because I'm not going to lie to people, but I'm like, come by and check out my new design this year. And I'm able to get people to come in because of that. But I would lead with what you're strongest in there. But I try to stay away from places that bill themselves as a craft fair. I've considered myself a leather artisan. I know that's brave. 3.5 years ago when I started this channel, I wouldn't have said that for myself, but I think that you should take some pride in your growth and what you build and all of that. I think that's important. But get out there and do your first market. Don't be afraid to see what's out there and talk to people, and it's going to counter, but don't go there trying to sell anything. Go there and, if nothing else, educate the people on what you make, why you make it the way you do, and why it will last. And the only thing that I will show, I've got some belts that I've picked up at thrift stores, the ones constructed, and I've said it before, but I had set up in a place I'm normally at, and I had someone walk in, and I was explaining to them my 2-layer belt, why I make it the way I do, the construction of that. And then let me grab this belt blank here. And then I had what I call my ranch hand belt, which is one piece of leather. I give myself a range on that between 11 and 14 ounces of thick. This one here is 12.25 ounces. It's from American Leather Direct. It's pre-finished. It's slicked on the back. And all I need to do to make this belt is cut the strip, and I'll run a number 3 on both top edges, and then I will use my, I don't know, can't think of the term, like a beading tool that'll put a crease in about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch in, gives kind of a little bit of rounded dome. There's no stitching on here. Once I do that, then I flip it over and I run the number 3 on the back. I slick it. This leather slicks really nice. I can slick this belt in like 3 minutes. And I'll wet both edges, and I just pull it through a piece of denim in my hand about 5 or 6 times each direction, and then I end up with a belt. But I had that belt, and then I had the 2-layer belt, and I was showing it to the guy, and the guy said, the 2-layer belt will fall apart before next year. He goes, I'll take one of these, that'll last forever. And I'm like, it's a sale. I'm like, I'll sell that to you, but I will say this. I said, if you buy the 2-layer belt, If it doesn't last a year, you bring it back, I'll make you two so that you can get through a year. I'll just give you two if you buy a 2-layer belt and it doesn't work out. And he took the 1-layer belt, and a year later he came back and he bought a 2-layer belt. But the one thing about a 2-layer belt that I have people ask me which end has the holes in it. Is it the butt end of the strap or the neck end of the strap? And I said I typically try to, when I cut the straps, I'll nip the corner of the butt end so I know which one is which. And when I make my belt, I try to swap those so that on the liner, the butt end is on one end, and on the top, the butt end is on the other end.
Just 2 comments. Odin Juarez says he never feels like he has enough inventory to do a market. And Corbin says you're a great craftsman and teacher.
Well, I'll take the compliment on the teaching. I'm not sure I'm yet a great craftsman. There's people out there a lot better than I am. I think my belts hold up with there. You have enough inventory for a show, I would say. Unless they want like $1,000 for booth fee, I think you have enough inventory. Even if you just got 5 sample belts and they came out of your closet, you have enough inventory for that. Back on the, having a bunch of stuff and it being noise. I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was Milo. Someone sent me a link to that video, and I understand where he's coming from. He was talking about building a brand. Robert Little leather belts, that would be a brand. Little belts that last a long time, whatever your motto would be. If you're building a brand, I would agree 110% to stick to like one thing. In his video, some of you will know him, and I'm sure he's not watching my videos, but he talked about if you're good at making dog collars, just make dog collars. You don't even make leashes. All I make is dog collars, and here's what I make, and all I make them for big dogs. Well, that's fine if you're doing a brand and you're going to have a website and you're going to have a draw for that. I agree 100% there, especially. In my booth, I'm able to position my belts very clearly and articulate why I do that. On a website, it would get confusing. So, I think you have enough. But I will tell you that all that other noise, that's what I sold yesterday. I can almost go through like play by play of what I sold. I sold one of my ranch hand belts in black. And then I had a lady come in and she spent time in the booth, and it was like I really think a lot of times people come in, they see all the stuff you've got, and they're trying to find something that they can buy, that they can use, and go through it. She dug through everything I had, and she bought a leash, a minimalist wallet, and 2 keychains. And they were little $5 keychains. It's just a simple flap of leather through a split ring. That was it. That's what she bought, and it was great. And then I had someone walk in and had to have a DOP kit. He started looking at the red ones, which I thought he was going to buy, and he bought one that's kind of like a distressed, looks like the bag's like 40 years old, piece of leather that I picked up in Prescott a couple of years ago. I need to make another one of those this winter. And so, I had a lot of mixed. I sold one of the ones I called a no black leather and black stitching with a stainless steel buckle. And then I sold one of my belts I call the classic, and it was in what I call faded dark mahogany. That's a story for another day, but it was really a high definition of, it took color a lot along the edges. And I kept telling my wife, I said, I need to throw that belt away because I want one like that. And I had a couple hides that would do that, but topic for another day. But you have enough for your booth. Just take a few of the items and go sit and talk with people, and go with the mindset that if nothing else, I'm going to educate somebody of why that belt lasts 9 months that you buy at the store. Even if you don't buy one from me, you'll know now why it doesn't last if you couldn't tell when you look at it and it's got vinyl in it and cardboard paper in it. No other questions there? Yeah, give me a thumbs up if you would. And, I really appreciate you taking time. And like I said, if you got some topics, type them in there, because I feel like I'm kind of in the wrapping up stage here. But I'll talk for another hour if you guys have topics you want to talk about. And I'll try to get better on the videos I took. Really, we took the month of May off. I didn't make any videos in May. You guys saw videos in May. You saw videos in June. A lot of those were made or recorded in April, and then I was turning out a video a day and propagating them out ahead of me there. And I've been so much into, I'll put it in Ricky's world, into splitting wood that I haven't had time really to look up and make those. And the other thing is, it's really frustrating here. I'll make a 5-minute video and it'll take a couple hours to upload that. And I'll make an hour-long video and it's like 12 hours to upload that video. And sometimes it gets like 90% done and then starts over again. So the Starlink here was good. And I know what you're gonna say. I've got $10,000 in equipment. Go ahead and buy a receiver for Starlink and go with that. But we've had a fiber company that's been promising fiber optics here in the neighborhood for 3 years. But they finally they've strung some cables here and they keep saying before the summer's out. So I guess I'll probably wait, because I've been told that the thing about fiber is the upload is the same as the download. And, then I can get back to uploading videos. It's just frustrating because I know somebody's gonna say, well, then don't do it that way. But I record, edit, upload everything from my phone. So when I need to upload that video, my phone is out of commission to record footage. So then I'm working on projects. I'm like half done. I'm like, no one wants to start with a half done project there. So, maybe more topic videos, that type of thing. You had your hand up for a minute there. John says, what colors can you buy for the ranch hand belt? So I've got black. I've got a color that was really popular. I don't know what they called it. I called it coffee bean because when you first look at it, you think it's black, but you look at it in the sun, you can see it's a very dark brown. I've got the medium brown, which is the color I just showed you, which was really popular. And then I've got a color that's kind of like saddle tan, not popular at all. Haven't sold very many of those. But I started off with that leather from American Leather Direct. And if you look, it's called, I think, Color Fast, I think is what they have it listed as. And they have it in different weights, and they call it either harness leather or whatever. I won't get into all of that. But I purchased them on Black Friday. I purchased 3 colors, and they did really well. The next year on Black Friday, I purchased a couple more, and then I needed like the coffee bean or one of them, and I ordered them, and it was like, it wasn't a #1 quality, it was a #2 quality. And I had 2 hides that I got. It was just like really frustrating. I should have called them because they, I can ship them back, I guess, but the shipping's it's far from free on the shipping. But one of them had like a big arch cut out of the back. So I should do it this way. I could only get like 8 belts or 6 belts out of that hide. And it kind of left a sour taste in my mouth with that there. I suppose I could make the ranch hand belt, just get a single layer, buy some leather that's going to be, say, 11-ounce leather. But this is nice because I don't have to worry about the backs or seal the backs. I don't dye it, but I guess I could buy some and then, go through the whole dyeing part of it there. But the reason why this was nice because it was fairly inexpensive. I mean, I could build the belt for less than $15 and then sell it for $65 and make $50 on it and have 25 to 45 minutes in it, I guess. If I'm building a bunch of them, it goes quicker, the less time in them, because you do one process on all of them, so you don't have as much setup time. But I think for a lot of you, I would encourage you not to get too caught up in trying to get quick at what you're making. I'd stay focused on the quality part of it first, and then let the productivity improve based on your confidence level and getting better at what you do on that. I think some of my earlier things, like I need to see if I can get this DOP kit done in X amount of time, so that it's priced right. And obviously, if it doesn't look right, then it doesn't matter what the price is. So, I would tell you to be less focused on the time in the beginning while you're building those items. And there was a lady that had that small purse, and she said, make this, and she opened it up, and it had pockets and dividers and all the stuff in there. And I'm like, I would have to have like $250 to make that. And she's like, really? She goes, it was only $40. I'm like, well, one, it's going to be made out of different material than what I'm making it out of. But two, they're making those things where they've got someone, there's probably 12 people or 20 people that touched making that bag. This person just sews the left-hand side of the zipper, and it goes on down the line, and someone else does something else to it. And they're able to get it done quickly as a result of that. The HR manager is like creeping towards the door into the house. I'll chat along here a little bit more, but I appreciate it. Everybody give a round of applause to Sherry. I do think that when I've watched other people's live streams and they spend more time looking at the computer and reading the comments, and then they're like, oh yeah, John, and they're not talking with you. I don't like that type of a live stream. So I really appreciate my HR manager, asking the questions so that I can kind of focus on that. Because even then, I still lose track. There's times I wander off from the point I was going to make there. But I don't mind doing the live streams. It helps if you guys are engaged with questions. I do appreciate the questions, because that's what really, in my mind, drives that. And you guys don't understand. I'll make the point one more time. A thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. But when you watch one of my videos, I take to heart what is said, maybe sometimes too much, but I learn from you guys as well. And a lot, if you read all those comments, maybe you come in a week after the video and you read through the comments, like 3 weeks down the road, there's probably gonna be a video that's maybe based a little bit around that. So you guys help drive the content of projects I make, topics I cover based off of your questions there. And I've told people in the past that if you've got a question, please ask it, because if I get a question, there's at least 10 people that had the same question, but they didn't take the time to type it in. And so I try to answer all those questions, and then I make notes a lot of times, and then those topics will come up later because it's probably of interest, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate we're coming up on 100 minutes of video. I guess I could push up for another 20 minutes and have 2 hours, but there's probably no point in taking a bunch more of your time on Saturday to do that. Go spend some time with your family there. And I've got a video coming up this next week here. I've got a fun topic that we're going to cover, because I think a lot of times people think that they have to have a huge dedicated space, to have the leathercraft hobby in. And I won't take it down to the kitchen table, because I know that's where a lot of you folks are working, is off of a kitchen table. But I do appreciate everybody being here today. So I tell you what, can you see what John said? Can you use that ranch hand leather to make other items? Yeah, you can. If you do one of two things, obviously you're going to need to split it into something thinner if you need thinner leather, or you're going to have to find a way to work with a thicker leather, because that piece there is 12 ounces, so that doesn't work with the ranch hand belt leather. When I got those, I just stripped them the whole length of that, and I've worked around that. Allowed me to work around maybe a mark that was a couple inches in on the butt end, and I was able to get the most belts out of that. I made some dog collars out of some of them, cut them in half and make 2 dog collars out of that. But to me, I guess based off the inventory of things I make, I don't have a lot of things that I make that's going to be that weight. I used the belly part of it and some of the neck part of it on that to make coasters. And I've sold quite a few coasters. I made one, there was one video and I ended up making like 120 coasters, I think it was. I've sold like half of those. So it's not like a big selling item. And I've got them priced probably a little bit on the high side. I mean, since it's going to be from stuff that would probably, not get used in the shop. I guess I could go to the mindset that I made them from junk or from trash, and if I get anything out of them, it's better than nothing. But I still feel like, you need to keep your prices elevated a little bit there, because that is going to be, don't work for something that you don't think if you're worth more than that, then if you work for lower than that, you just devalued yourself. And I think it's that way a little bit in the leather craft. My father did lapidary work, which I don't know if everybody knows what lapidary work is, but it's making jewelry from precious and semi-precious stones, where maybe you cut slabs, and then you scribe and you cut out maybe an oval for a necklace, and then you're doing all the shaping of that stone in there. And he did it. He was trying to sell some, but he was priced low enough. I can still remember. I could tell you where we were. I could probably find the park that we were in, set up kind of like I've talked about, like a craft show. And a lady walks up and she goes, "That's not real." And my dad's like, "Yeah, that's real." She goes, "That's jade." And he goes, "Yeah, that's jade. That's blue tiger eye. That's moss agate." And she goes, "No, it's not. I buy jewelry all the time, and you can't sell it for that price." So you can shoot yourself in the foot with your pricing as well. You devalue what it is. And I tell people when I show them the belt, my 2-layer belt, I'll go all the way down through it. I talk about it, and I'm like, this belt here, and I, like this one here is 1.25 inches. I've got probably, I'd say, like $34 in materials in that. Like this belt's got $34 in materials, 5 hours of labor, and that's why I sell it where it's at. They think they're going to buy. There are people out there that they're going to think the $60 is high for a belt like this, and I'm going to tell you that it's not. But I've told Milo, stop negotiating with yourself before you give a price to your customer, because you're like, well, I wouldn't pay that for it. No, you wouldn't, because you know how to make that, and you can make that yourself for $45 in materials. So why would you pay $170? But there are people out there that will pay that for a custom handmade belt. Milo, I appreciate that. I think, let me look here and see. I know, I try not to do the old scroll through comments here, but I think Sherry did a good job of keeping you guys, your questions to the forefront, because they scroll by while you're talking. And let's see, Rick, I don't know if you're still there. Please explain, when does a hobby turn into business? Some people work on their hobby every day, so when does it turn into a job? It turns into a job when you want to go do something else, but you can't because you have orders that you have to make. You want to go fishing, Rick, and instead you have to split firewood because you know you need firewood. Then you've turned that into a job, and now you need a vacation from your job. I think that's I don't mean to pick on you there, Rick. I know you like to go fishing, and I think you actually enjoy doing the firewood, and it doesn't always have to turn it into drudgery to be considered a business. But if things get out of balance, if you're putting food on the table with that, I don't even know if that's a good explanation. But I really think maybe when I first said it, that you want to go fishing, but you can't go fishing because you need to split firewood, that's a business. That's not a hobby anymore. If you go fishing and then fill in with the other, then that's a hobby. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Let me scroll down and see if anybody said you're wrong on that. Black Forest, Germany. Well, hello. I appreciate you being here. We were in Germany a couple of years ago. We really enjoyed going through there. And I'm not sure what portion of Germany is the Black Forest of Germany. We were on a river cruise from Budapest to Amsterdam, so that gives you an idea of where we were at there. There's a outdoor channel that I follow, and they do hiking all over, and I like to follow along on them. And I know they're in Germany, and I said, hey, I was just curious if we're close. And she's like, it's not like America. You're within 2 or 3 hours of any place if you're in Germany. Here in the United States, when I tell people that it's a 22-hour drive to get back to Indianapolis, outside of Indianapolis is where I grew up, to see family. They look at that as like, that's a big number. That's going to be from like Amsterdam to someplace in Turkey, probably. Yeah, Dean, I'm still here. Sorry. Hopefully I didn't wear you guys out. But anyway, I appreciate it. We are 105 minutes, 41 of you still logged in anyway. I appreciate you guys taking time to be here. I'm going to leave this go here for a few minutes while I'm working. Type me some comments. Let me know what topics you would like covered. Maybe not projects. What topics would you like my opinion on? And I'll make some notes here and I'll try to work those in. And I do hope to help people. When I see people on like Facebook Market, or not Facebook Marketplace, but on Facebook, on some of the groups, and they're talking about, I just had a sale this weekend and I didn't sell enough to pay the booth fee, and that I hate to see anybody go through that. That's extremely frustrating and not a great feeling. If there's anything I can do to help, in my, not this description of this live stream, but if you go to my channel and you go to the description, there is my emails in there. Shoot me some questions. If there's anything I can do to help, I really would like to try to help. I've got a series. If you go to playlist, there's a series under, it's like business topics, and I cover some of that. I'm not an expert. It's worth everything you paid for that advice, but it's maybe a different perspective on that. I show how I set up my booth in there. I talk about talking with customers, and when you sell something to somebody, hopefully you got a business card, and I give them 2 business cards, and I'm like, can you leave that one in the bag or put it in your wallet? And so when someone says, I really like that belt, where'd that come from? Hand them a card. Don't be afraid to ask people to be promoted, because I think a lot of times they're looking for a way to help support you as well, and that's another way to do that. Have you used your die cutting press much? Which dies have you used? My ancestors from Germany. Hey, Dean. So we've got ancestors from that same part of the world there. There's my mom's grandfather was from the borderland between Germany and France. And I guess depending on where the lines were drawn, at times it was in Germany and sometimes in France there. And then I've got other relatives. I got a brother right now. I'm sure he's not on here. He's at Grandad Mountain Scottish Festival. It's in North Carolina. And we are out of Scotland through Ireland and Virginia in the early 1700s into this part of the world here. And the question on the press, when I got that, I had said that I'm kind of, I know I could go buy another trailer, but the trailer that I've got is really pretty small. And this all gets packed up and hauled back and forth between here, where Snowbirds, and Arizona, where we spend the winter. The leather takes up the majority of it. I guess if I was better about, I've got a lot of leather. If I was better about not buying leather until I had it to use, my belt leathers, I probably could have left a bunch of this there. But anyway, the press lives in Arizona. I said I wasn't going to move it back and forth. And it's an inexpensive Vivora. I took a bunch of darts over, getting that. And I only have a couple of clicker dies, and I keep telling myself I need to go ahead and buy them. I had it all drawn up and sent it off to Texas Custom Dies, I think they're called, and then didn't pull the trigger on it to cut those couple pieces. But here's a perfect example of why I haven't done that. Is I'll make 10 of those, and it'll take me 2 years of them being just an item on the booth table to sell those. And the cost of the clicker die, maybe I need to sell my knife sheaths for more money, but it would take me like 3 years to pay the cost of the clicker dies, quality clicker die, to cut those out. I can cut them out here really pretty quickly and easily. And I've had people say you need to get them for your belts, because you can use them to do the whole layout here on the buckle end, a clicker die for that, and for this as well. I suppose I could, but it doesn't take me very long to lay that out either. And I guess maybe some of it I'm looking at the fact I'm hand sewing it, so I just spent 3 hours, 4 hours hand sewing the belt. If it takes me 10 minutes to lay out all the holes and get them poked in the right place, that doesn't seem like a big deal to me. But if I was making 30 belts a day, then it would make a lot more sense to have the clicker to click those out. But it's a small portion of the time. That video, I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but it was on hand sewing or machine sewing those pancake sheaths, knife pancake sheaths. And the difference between the machine sewing and hand sewing was 8 minutes a sheath. That's 8 minutes of just the sewing process. So if you take the cutting out, the tooling and all that, that 8 minute difference is really pretty small. So should I buy a sewing machine to save 8 minutes? I would tell you not, unless you had like 200 of those you needed to make. Now it starts to make more sense there. So, but I'll leave this going. I'll make a few notes here. I need to clean up some here in the shop. That's the thing, this time of year, I get so focused on producing the belts that I don't keep things as organized as I probably should. A lot of times what I end up doing is I'll get the belt to the sewing part, and then I set it aside and work on another one. And then in the evening, I use the stitching pony that Wayne gifted me, and I appreciate it. It's sitting in front of the TV, and I'll hand sew the edges of the belt while we're watching whatever TV we're watching that evening. So I'm able to kind of keep things moving along that way, and turn a 6 hour day in the shop into an 11-hour day by the time you figure in the hand sewing in front of the TV at the end of the day. Yeah, that's how you turn a hobby into a business. That's another definition of it there, Rick. I appreciate it there. Space is a concern in buying machines. Absolutely, 100%. But I've got a good topic for the video this week on Wednesday, and that will segue into that. And the lucky thing is I have access to the Starlink. The Starlink seems to be working really good, but I'll have access to that. So maybe I can try to get a couple things recorded and uploaded before they leave here mid this week coming. I appreciate spending time with me in the shop today. Please like, share, and subscribe. More importantly, I hope you have a great day. I'll leave it open here if you got anything else. Okay, John, a business is when you no longer enjoy it. So it's not a business yet, because I still enjoy it most of the time. As long as I'm making belts, I still enjoy it. I am going to get cleaned up here a little bit. And I've got that strap I need to turn into a belt for Steph Ellsbury. It's dry here. A humid day is like 20% humidity. And yes, I still use my apron all the time. I know, I got my back to you. That's not good. I got a sticker here. Noel would do a sticker thing where he shows his stickers. This is from Open Air Adventures. Been looking for a place to put it. Oh. Go ahead, type it in there, Milo. Quick question, I'll get you. The HR manager ended up with 2 purses from there. And some people have asked, this is the first travel tote I ever made. And it belongs to the HR manager, and it goes with us on every trip. And this is the design that the other ones are made out of. This one here is put on with, these are copper rivets. The other ones I use Chicago screws for. I'll be right back, Milo, and I'll look at that question you got there. Take your time typing it. I'm going to leave it open here for a little bit more. So Milo says that the antique paste liquefies in the Texas heat. I could see how it could do that. I'm not sure, excuse me. Obviously, if you kept it in the house where it's air conditioned, it wouldn't do that. I don't know that I would like to. It'd be interesting to test antique paste that was somewhat a liquid. Does that make it hard to use, Milo? And I see here I take occasional commissions. Yeah, the problem with a commission, that's the other thing, is it feels different to sell things off the rack than it does to take an order for something. There's a couple things there. One is like that bag. If the bag's 3/4 of an inch smaller, on a commission, they expect it to kind of be that way. And I'm pretty upfront anymore, like on the belts when I dye them, like I want this color here, and I'll tell them, have you ever stained wood? And they're like, oh yeah, I've stained wood. I said, you know how one board stains different than the next? Yeah. I said, you have to give me a little bit of a leeway there as well on that. But when I make something, obviously if it comes out a different color than I intended in its commission, I have started over. And then I put that belt into my inventory, and it's okay as long as it's not like got a name on it, something like that. And my theory is that if you pick it off the rack, you can look at it, and if it's got a brand mark somewhere or whatever it is, you're buying it knowing what it is. If you make it as a commission, it's got to be. The pressure can feel like it's got to be perfect as well. It doesn't stick like normal. Yeah, I guess I can see that. I guess I would, keep it in a small tote and keep it in air-conditioned space. I've not ran into that, but I've, we leave Arizona hopefully before it gets to 100 degrees, and that's usually at the peak during the day. And if it cools off at night, then it didn't even occur to me that the antique paste could become a liquid, but that's how they get it into the containers. They don't put it in, at a shoe polish consistency. It's interesting. Hadn't even thought about that. Does anybody else's workbench get out of control with stuff? Mine does. And some of it's just supplies. I don't have a good mechanism for supplies. And this last year when I packaged up, I did a video. I didn't do it this year on moving up here. I'd done a series of, showing me pack up. But when I was unpacking in Arizona, some of you have seen where I cut the leather straps and I put them in I've got a little organizer. It's about this tall, and I put the pre-cut straps in it, which is really pretty nice. I make a lot of belts, so it's nice when I need an 1.5 inch belt. I just go there, open up the strap container, pull it out, and away I go. I don't have to unroll it. I don't have to clear the cutting table. Anybody else have that problem? And then cut the strap. It's already cut. But when I got home, when I got there and I was unloading the trailer and I saw a spot that was empty, I realized that I left all of my pre-cut straps were in Colorado, because I have them in Arizona. They're sitting out in the open, but here they're inside of a cabinet. I open up a cabinet and get that. So anyway, they didn't make the trip this last year, and it didn't turn out to be a big deal. since I built that cutting table in Arizona, it's really made the strap cutting a lot easier, because what I would do before is I didn't want to get down on the garage floor. So I'd go in the house on the tile floor with my strap cutter, and I would take a couple sides in and I would strip that down into 1.5 and 1.25 straps, liners, and then put them in the container. But with that table, I'm able to unroll and cut a strap and then put it back. So I haven't cut as many hides all the way down as I used to do now that I have a cutting table. And the cutting table here is just 2 sawhorses with, I took a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, cut it in half long ways. They just lay one on top of the other on the sawhorses with cutting mats. All right. It's 2 hours. I think we're going to call it there. I appreciate everybody that took time to make comments, give me a thumbs up. And obviously, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. And I'll get that video out. Maybe I'll just keep right on working here today with the camera here, because I know what I want to cover on that. And we'll go forward from there. Appreciate you spending time with me today. Have a great weekend, and I hope next week is the best one you've ever had.